Right, 1 December 2023, and today I have another update. As I mentioned earlier today, I'm going to be having quite a number of updates this weekend. We've got a lot that is happening in terms of news and in terms of events that are lined up around Zimbabwe and around Zimbabwean issues. So specifically, today we've got the announcement that was made by the Minister of Home Affairs in South Africa, Dr. Motsoaledi, and he has announced changes to the Zimbabwe exemption permit and the Lesotho exemption permits. But today I don't want to go back into all that detail. I've gone into a lot of detail on these permits. Today I want to focus on the mistakes that Dr. Motsoaledi is making, and my view is that eventually they will have to remove Dr. Motsoaledi and put someone else for this problem to be solved. There is an immigration problem in South Africa, and for this to be solved, they will eventually have to put a different person because he is not getting what the problem is. And the approach he's taking is legalistic, which means he's trying to deal with this from a law perspective. Is a consultative and most likely a humane approach, because the things that we're dealing with here, they are historical. They go way back to the period when people were fighting for independence here in South Africa and also in Zimbabwe and in Lesotho. So basically Lesotho, South Africa, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, all these countries, they are basically one country. Whether we like it or not, they are very, very interconnected. And my biggest worry about what Dr. Motsoaledi is doing is the fact that he is disobeying a court order. And there is a court order here from the Constitutional Court which says that the immigration laws of South Africa must be amended. So before he does anything, he should be talking about amending the law. And it's not something that he can do by himself. The amendment must go first, and all these are the things that he's doing must come through the law. So at the moment he's trying to do something, but he does not want to understand that there is a court order or a court judgment that says he must amend himself, and the Parliament of South Africa must amend the law. And when I say amend the law, I mean that there must be consultation between Dr. Motsoaledi, the South African general public, and Parliament must debate all these things. So what he's currently doing is a unilateral process, and it's eventually going to be challenged in court. There is no way this is going to succeed. What he's doing, what is announced today is basically null and void. In 2 years' time, we're going to be back here again, and Home Affairs is wasting a lot of money that they do not have, millions and millions on lawyers. That is what they are spending. So let's look at the announcements that was made today on the Zimbabwe exemption permit. There is a court ruling, as I said, which already extended the permit. So there's nothing new. The permit was not yet suspended. However, what is done is he has formalized the process, and now people have to reapply. People have to go again and go through a process. And this process costs a lot of money. This is what is going to be a big, big problem for the Zimbabweans. And he has also announced that Zimbabweans who are on these permits cannot be permanent residents. And this is very, very problematic, because it means that someone who was legal for the past 10 years, they've got no path to become a permanent resident. And Zimbabweans who've been here for more than 10 years, they deserve to be permanent residents. And I think what makes things even worse is that Dr. Motsoaledi is talking about appealing, whereas he was prevented from appealing. The ruling that was given, the court order or the court judgment, refused him permission to appeal. So there's no path for appeal. He was given a cost order, which means that he has to pay money from his own pocket, because they've been doing all these things wasting the court's time, and not following the law, not following the previous judgment. So he's appealing, or he says he's going to appeal when he knows that he cannot appeal. So all these things that he's doing right now, as I said, is null and void, and it's going to be very, very costly. But I want to deal with one particular issue here, and I want you guys to understand how big this is. The number of Zimbabweans who are here in South Africa is over 4 million. And out of those 4 million, about 2 million are domestic workers, people who work in the gardens, people who work in restaurants, people who work low-level jobs. When I talk of low-level jobs, I talk about working in fast food takeouts and people who work clean windows, those jobs, the China Mall. If you go to China Mall, those kind of jobs, filling stations, that's where Zimbabweans are working. So basically all the low-level jobs that you have, that you know in South Africa, except for retail, that's where the young South African guys are going to work. But any job that needs you to carry stuff, work long hours, get low pay, and, for example, sleep in someone's house, for a domestic worker. The domestic worker will work for 6 days. They sleep in someone's house, and they only go off for 1 day, and they don't take leave. Most of the Zimbabweans who are working as domestic workers, they do not take leave. They only go home once a year, and when they go home, most of them are not paid for that time when they're not working. So that's why you see young South Africans, they will not work as domestic workers, they will not work in the garden, they will not work on a farm, they will not work at a filling station, they will not work at the restaurant. So these things that I've mentioned to you, you will not see a young South African working that job, because a young South African has got choices. You can go and work in the retail, you can go and work at Checkers, you can go and work at Macro, you can go and work at Foschini, or you can go and work at Mr. Price. You won't see a Zimbabwean working in those places. But the places where they don't pay you, for example, the restaurant, you will see a Zimbabwean working there. And a South African will not allow himself or herself to be a domestic worker who lives inside a house. Why? Because if someone is a South African, they've got a family, they've got a husband, they've got a wife. At night, they want to knock off at 5 o'clock, then they go home to their husband and their own children. The Zimbabwean domestic worker, they leave their child in Zimbabwe. And let me give you a background of what kind of a person is a domestic worker. This is someone from the rural areas of Zimbabwe, someone with no educational skills, someone with no other qualifications most of the time. They come here and they stay in a house. They work from morning until the owner of the house comes back. If they've got a baby, they still have to take care of that baby at night. Most of them, they sleep in the same house or in the same room with the baby, which means they're basically sleeping, they're working 24 hours. And they still get paid the one salary, which is for working 8 hours. So the domestic worker from Zimbabwe, from Lesotho, or from Swaziland, or all these other countries, they are not going to act like a South African domestic worker. A South African domestic worker is going to have choice. She's going to be able to go home, and she won't work those long hours that the Zimbabwean domestic worker is working. So the issue here is not whether a domestic worker is a special skill or not. The issue is that Dr. Motsoaledi is disobeying a court order. There is a court order that they must amend the law, the immigration law. The way the immigration law is right now, it's not right. It allows the police to arrest people, immigrants, and lock them up without going to court for 48 hours. We talked about this last month. So there is one part, which is they need to amend the law. When they amend the law, then everything that has been said falls away. Everything that Dr. Motsoaledi says falls away. They need to look at immigration not as a special skills thing, but according to what does the market want. The market in South Africa has certain demands. So young South Africans or South African families, they want a domestic worker who is going to work the same way that a Zimbabwean domestic worker is working. So they have to satisfy it. Dr. Motsoaledi has to satisfy the demand. There is no house right now in Gauteng that does not have a Zimbabwean domestic worker. If you go there and there's a baby in a house, most likely that domestic worker who is taking care of that baby is a Zimbabwean domestic worker. So if you are saying you don't want these people to be legalized in Zimbabwe, in South Africa, how do you want them to work here? What is the dispensation on which they work? So they have to make sure that the Home Affairs of South Africa has to make sure that these people are catered for, because you can't have illegal people, millions and millions of illegal people. He already said last month that they don't know how many people are here. They do not know how many Zimbabweans are here. They do not know how many Malawians are here. They only know the few people that have applied for the ZEP, which is about 168,000. Those are the number of people they know. Whereas there's 4 million people. Where is the 4 million people? Which means you've got all these people floating around as unknowns, and Home Affairs needs to deal with this. So the first problem, as I said, is that Dr. Motsoaledi is disobeying a court order. The court order says there must be an amendment of the law. There's also a court judgment for the ZEP to stay open, not to be changed so that you cannot be a permanent resident. There's no way where it says a person with ZEP cannot be a permanent resident in the original arrangement. So now they're changing it. So it means the guys who took them to court now have to go back again to court and take them and say they've made these changes and these changes are not according to the judgment. They also have to amend the law in terms of the issues I've raised here, domestic workers and all these special skills. When you talk of a special skill, as I said before, and in fact I think I want to play what he said here, and I want to, because this is quite distressing to many people to hear this. So let's play what he said here, and I want you guys to hear what he is saying.
Childcare is a critical skill. I can tell you with my eyes closed, it is not. It is absolutely not a critical skill, unless we have got a new definition of a critical skill. And I'm not saying it's not essential or important. I think that's what I need to explain, my sister. A critical skill has got a particular definition. It's defined. It has got nothing to do with being important or being, being important. A critical skill is a skill that is needed by the economy. But
right, so I think this is where we have a serious problem. And I want to go to the problem that Dr. Motsoaledi is having here. We have, let's say, 2 million households with the Zimbabweans working there. And these people go to work in the morning and they leave their babies. And if they don't have someone to stay with those babies, they have to take them to a daycare. Right? But at that daycare, it depends on whether the family affords or not. But at that daycare, there's already Zimbabweans working there. The people working at almost all the daycares are Zimbabweans. So what Dr. Motsoaledi is saying here is that because this person who is taking care of a baby is not educated, then that person is not a critical skill. I don't think that is correct. So a person that is working in the kitchen, a person that is taking care of a baby, a person that is attending to a garden, you need them to be registered. You need them to be here legally. They are not going to steal from you. They're not going to run away with the goods. And not registering is just being callous. You're just making their life hard, because now when they go home, they have to pay those human traffickers to take them home. When they're going to the bank, they can't open a bank account. So when you pay them, you have to pay them by what's it called, WhatsApp or e-wallet. They cannot rent a house because they don't have any proof of income. So you're just making life difficult for them. We have domestic workers who've been here in South Africa for the past 20 to 30 years. So this particular group of people, this between 2 million and 3 million Zimbabweans, I'm not even talking of the Malawans and the Mozambicans, they need to be catered for in the new laws and the new dispensation that is coming. You cannot have so many people that are not accounted for. Because how many people have domestic workers, and where do they have them in the South African law? So basically they are legislating these people to be here illegally. And the point that I keep making is, would you want the person who take care of your baby to jump the Limpopo River or the Zambezi River or whatever coming here? Don't you want that person to be comfortable the same way that you are comfortable when they're taking care of your baby? Because this is basically where it is. The immigration law here in South Africa is broken. It's not talking to what needs to happen. The people that need the payments are the domestic workers, the child minders, the people working in the restaurant. You need those people to be properly documented and not going through all these processes. Every 2 years, they have to renew. They have to apply for waivers. They can't move freely. Do you know that a flight from Zimbabwe is cheaper than a bus? If you're flying from Johannesburg to Zimbabwe, it's 1,500 one way. A bus is probably costing more. Because these people don't have permits, they have to spend days upon days traveling to Zimbabwe. Because they cannot have a proper passport which can cross the border, which is got a permit. There is so much illegality because the Home Affairs has not catered for these people. So I think I've covered this very, very well, and I don't think we've got more here to say, besides the fact that what the Home Affairs is doing in terms of immigration, it's wrong, not only in terms of the domestic workers. If you look at public service, almost 60% of management positions are not filled by qualified people. People they are acting capacities because they don't have skills. And that's why the South African government is not functioning well. Especially if you go to the provincial governments, they're not functioning because they don't have the proper skills in the provincial governments. And these skills could easily be filled by Zimbabweans who've got the right skills. And I'm not saying that someone's job is going to be stolen. These are vacant positions. And all this needs to be sorted from an immigration point of view. And there's only one immigration here in South Africa. So I think I've covered the facts of what is happening. Let me bring in my brother, Pangane Mhlanga. We talked about this issue last year. We talked about immigration. So I just want him to give me his views on this thing. And we're going to wrap it up. My brother, how are you doing this evening?
I'm good. It's been a long time, pardon. I'm happy to see you. That is wonderful.
Right, I've been ranting here because I feel like Home Affairs is getting away with it. Especially the portion that there's a court judgment, and they are continuing to make changes without considering what the court judgment said, which is to say they must amend the law. And before they even amend the law, they were given 2 years to amend the law. And now they've extended permits by only 2 years. And they've put conditions on those permits. What is your view on this? What is happening here?
What we are witnessing is just a political statement. According to my hypothesis, I think Dr. Mollis, the minister, has become a de facto Secretary General of the ANC. This is a political statement. He is not representing the Constitution of South Africa or acting in a way that is for the Constitution of South Africa. He wants to present an idea to South Africans that ANC is doing something about foreigners. Like what you said, everything that he is doing right now is very unconstitutional because he hasn't acted on the court order. When he was ordered by the court to do certain things, he haven't done that. So this is a political statement. This is a political stance that they have taken. And why I'm saying that, because they saw it working for Action SA, when Action SA went with the anti-foreigner rhetoric, and it worked for Action SA. They got the votes that they wanted, and now ANC is trying to do the same for the 2024 elections, because I do not think that ANC have ever been threatened before, but this time they are tight. This is a political stance, and it's bad, and I'm not happy about it. Like you said, it's very disturbing. If you hear the stories that he was talking about, domestic workers, regarding how they are not professional and stuff like that, it's very disturbing. We are being used by political parties. We've become part of their mandate for campaigning. That is very disturbing.
Okay, I think I hear you, and I think let's wrap it up here. I don't have any more to contribute on this topic. There's obviously a lot that is going to happen here, and I get your take that this is all political. Hence, they put it 2 years away, and we'll probably get another change in the act in 2 years' time. You had suggested last year that Zimbabweans must look elsewhere for
Yes.
immigration. What do you say now?
It's always because it has become part of us as Zimbabweans to move out, no matter what happens. Even if our economy manages to survive and become better, Zimbabweans will always be going out there. It has become part of our culture. Yeah, there are other countries that are actually taking Zimbabweans, especially the UK has been taking a lot of families from Zimbabwe and Africa as a whole, because Africa, when you really look at it, it's one of the most growing in terms of population. The European countries are now being threatened in terms of labor in the future. They are not going to have labor because they have become gays and other things. But we don't want to talk about it. But you see, there are a lot of options that we can always take. If we want to stay in Zimbabwe, that's okay. If we want to go out there, there are countries now they are offering. I think you've seen that the United Kingdom have relaxed even the visa conditions to go to United Kingdom. If you still want to go there, you can still now go there now easily, and
Okay,
that's what
and
we
I
do.
saw that the Malawans have sent quite a number of people to Israel.
Yes,
Okay, I
Israel.
think we've got this
Oh,
covered.
sorry. Yeah, we got that. Israel is quite a bit tricky, but it's always a good thing for people to explore. But my advice is just explore and let's go out there. And also, I wanted to say something. You mentioned the issue regarding being arrested. The doctor forgets the fact that 1 year ago, he actually said that the police should not arrest foreigners and ask for permits and stuff like that. But this is happening every day. People are being arrested to be released so that they can be arrested again tomorrow. It is fueling now corruption here in South Africa. It's quite disturbing to see people being arrested and released so that they can be arrested again, because the people who are arrested who are arresting these people, they'll be given a bribe, 200, 300 rands. It's disturbing. So it's a trajectory that we always predicted. Corruption, the same problems that we have in Zimbabwe are the same problems that are starting to show now, especially when it comes to the police and arresting people. Quite disturbing.
Okay, Mr. Pagana Mshanga, thank you very much for joining me today. I want to wrap this up. Normally, I don't broadcast on Fridays, but I think the immigration issue is very important. Um, what is happening with immigration in South Africa, to me, it can't be solved by the current people who are there. So that is the point I wanted to make today. They need to make changes at Home Affairs and get a new minister. That is the only way that this is going to be sorted, because he's so embedded now in all these things that he's been doing. They even put the border guards. I remember
Yes.
they started a whole border force. We talked about it here. All these things are not working. They employed thousands and thousands of people, at Home Affairs. I don't know how many thousand of people they employed. It's not working. They are giving themselves more work,
Exactly.
but they are not
You know,
addressing the simple thing, which is just to register people formally.
exactly.
And then
Thank you
once
for
you
saying
register
that.
those people formally, you're good. You get them
E-
off the queues. You don't have people in the queue.
Exactly. Thank you for saying that, because South Africa stands to get more money through the fiscus if people are registered. And his statements that he does not know how many people are here, it's a lie. To tell you for a fact, probably maybe from 4 million, maybe a tenth of them are illegals, but the other 9 tenths is they came through the border with their passports. So that information should be at the Home Affairs. The other problem is you have to wonder whether if the Home Affairs have got any other mandate or any job except just to deal with Zimbabwean. It seems like Zimbabweans is the only problem that the minister that's his job. That is to-do list. It's very disturbing, but it is happening because when they speak of a foreigner, you define a foreigner here in South Africa differently. A foreigner in Zimbabwe is a Zimbabwean. No anybody can be, even if his statement he mentions Zimbabwe more than 50 times or 60 times. That's disturbing. And I do not know, pardon, I sent you a message. I said when people are desperate like the ANC, they are now dangerous, and we have to be very careful as we live here in South Africa, because it's a political statement. We do not know what's going to happen to most Zimbabweans after these statements by the minister. And you are right; he must resign. Actually, it's a disgrace. He must resign. If I was the president, I would fire that person. He must resign. He doesn't deserve that seat. So he's speaking on
Okay,
behalf
I would
of
say the
the
same
ANC.
because of the. I would say the same because of the court order. I think they've ignored the first court order. That's why the judge gave them a cost order. Like they have to pay from their own pockets. This is a continuation. I think that from that perspective that there's a judgment, and you keep doing the same thing over and over instead of amending the law, instead of tabling this in parliament. I think for that reason, resignation. I don't think anyone resigns in South Africa. They have to be fired, right?
They have to be fired.
Yeah.
It's like they're just coming to work, and their memo is Zimbabwe. That's the to-do list. It's disturbing that the War Department of Home Affairs of South Africa, their to-do list is Zimbabwe, as if Home Affairs has got no other tasks to do. And it's very disturbing because that's what fuels hate amongst the people. And it's very dangerous. We get people killed through these xenophobic attacks. And those guys, the border guards, you realize that recently they were recently mentioned as illegal, and they are illegal. They are not the police. They don't have arresting powers. It's just disturbing. A lot of things that are happening that is so illegal, unconstitutionally, but they keep on doing it for political purposes and rattling, and that's what they are doing, because 2024 is coming, and they will lose an election because parties like Action SA is just going to start their anti-foreigner rhetoric, and that's what most South Africans want to hear because they have been prepared for this. It's all about separating people and dividing people. That's what is happening. And as long as
Okay.
they, yeah. Oh my God.
Right, Mr. Pangana Mhlanga, let's wrap this up. Thank you very much for joining me. Is there anything else you want to say before we close?
There's a lot, but what I'm just seeing is just disturbing. I think you heard the minister. I hope there will be a change, and I wish the minister resigns. And I really want him to resign. He doesn't deserve that post. But he's not speaking on his own behalf. He's just speaking for the political party called the African National Congress, which is the ANC. This is a political statement. They are using us for their political gains. That's disturbing.
All right, thank you very much, sir. And I really enjoyed talking to you. Let's close this, and we'll be back again tomorrow. As I said, there's a lot that is happening this weekend, so I'll be appearing quite a number of times. Thank you very much, sir, and good night to everybody.